Hi again, and welcome to another seminar from the group Social Democratic Friends of Israel. We haven't had this webinar in a while, but now the Swedish election is over. But there is an election coming up in Israel on November 1st, I think. And we have a guest tonight that is from our sister party in Israel, Michal Biran, and she will introduce herself a bit first.
Okay. Christopher, thank you very much for inviting me. I apologize in advance. My 3-year-old daughter is on the other room. I hope she won't bother. I'll introduce myself briefly. Until 3.5 years ago, I used to be a member of the parliament for the Labour Party in Israel for 6 years. I've been in the opposition when Netanyahu was prime minister. It was a very frustrating time to be a member of the left. Now I'm the international secretary for the Labour Party, and I have my own business. So I'm like enjoying both worlds. I think I'll start with telling you a little bit of what's happening now in the Israeli election, and will there be time for questions in there, or maybe people can write you the questions? You can also ask them for them.
Except for the talk about the election, I have some questions, and then the people who watch this can comment, and then I see the comments and I can bring them into the show.
Great. So I have to admit, the Labour coming to this election on not a very bright situation, and it seems that from election to election we got smaller. Just to understand, when Yitzhak Rabin, that was our prime minister that was assassinated in 1995, was prime minister for the Labour. Labour had 44 seats in the parliament. And now we have 7. And in the polls, we have 5, 6, depends which poll. 1 second. בובי, אני באמצע משהו, אם את רוצה, את יכולה לבוא לכאן. Sorry, my daughter. I'm sorry. I'll be back in 20 seconds. That's motherhood.
Yeah, no problem.
Sorry. Well, our main problem is that it's really, really easy to form new parties in Israel. When the state of Israel was founded, it was a big deal to form a new party. And if you try to split from existing party, you need to have 3 of the faction. It was saved for like big ideological dispute that people just can't live together. But with time, it got so easy that even when people are forming new parties, they're saying it's this and this and this faction going together as a technical block, and then they can split in a second the minute the election are over. Thanks to that, we have so many new parties every election. When I was first elected to the parliament, we had this amazing thing. I don't know if it's happening in Sweden as well, that every high school got this panel that representative of different parties come and explain what the agenda of the parties. And when I was first doing it in 2013, you had like 5 representatives of right, left, center explaining the agenda. And then the high school student said, okay, I think I'm between Labour and Meretz. And from election to election, the parties got more and more bizarre, okay? So, and there are like 12 people sitting there, and some of the high school students ask, but I don't understand what's the difference between this party and this party. And it's the same social right, but just different leaders. And everybody comes like for one election and then disappear. And in this situation, Labor got very, very weak, not because there's less people that support our views. It's just that they like something new. It's like they're choosing a product and they say, we've been to vacation in Rhodes, so now we'll go to Barcelona. Like, what's new this election? Who will we vote for? And from election to election, the base that we had, the people that you can count of, that will vote Labor no matter what, they're getting older. And people that share our views and young, they just change your mind from election to election. So that's like the basic situation. The good thing was that after such a long time, we managed to get Netanyahu out of power. And that was something that, well, I've been a member of parliament 6 years in the opposition. I cannot explain the frustration. Trying, by the way, we're talking about the two-state solution, Labor for the two-state solution, and then I'm going abroad, meeting friends in Australia, and asking them not to support a unilateral recognition of a Palestinian state, telling them that you need, even for when you rent an apartment, you need two sides to agree. And then they ask me, okay, but you're not doing anything. Your Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says that he's not going to do anything. So what's the alternative? So like with Benjamin Netanyahu doing things that we cannot explain, we do not support, and he was such a long time in power that you had like people that were of age to drink alcohol and drive, and 2/3 of their lives, since they were first graders, Netanyahu was in power. Like they couldn't imagine someone else being prime minister. And we had like, I think it was 4 elections, one after another for every 6 years, because no one actually managed to form a coalition that can sustain. Netanyahu is lacking the majority in like one vote, but from election to election, it seems that he can't get the one vote that he needs. בובי שלי, אני באמצע משהו. אם את רוצה משהו, בואי רגע ותגידי לי כאן. Sorry, my daughter again. So the amazing thing happened that last election, the leader of the, I think it's the equivalent of your liberals, Yair Lapid, he's a leader of a center, let's call them, a liberal party, and he was much bigger than Labor and much bigger than other parties, but he knew that he cannot form a coalition. So he was willing to offer a rotation to a very small, I think there were 5 seats in the parliament, a party from the right wing, and allowed Naftali Bennett to be prime minister. And basically that was the only way to, it's not that left wing had a majority, it's just that Naftali Bennett, with only 5 seats in the parliament, it's somehow similar to what happened in Borgen on the first season, that a very small party somehow is the only one that can form a government. And for a year, I can't even tell you, it was just less tensed. Exactly like what happened in the US, that when they had Trump in power, that every day, like he woke up and thought, oh God, what happened today? And we had the same in Israel with Netanyahu as prime minister. Every day, like sometimes imaginary crises, every time inciting one group in the Israeli society against each other. And for a year, We had peace of quiet. If you told me that, I'd be happy that a right-wing person like Naftali Bennett is Prime Minister of Israel. Like, if you would have told me that like 2 years ago, I'd be like, no way. But actually, he didn't promote any right-wing policies. The government was so diverse. It was the first time ever that an Arab list was part of an Israeli government, and that was something really, really meaningful, because Netanyahu always incited that if that happens, like, all hell is going to break loose, and the left wing kind of was afraid of that, like with Netanyahu doing that, and it happened, and everything was okay. Different parties, different agenda, but basically they were doing day-to-day life, transportation, internal security, education. But unfortunately, the differences was so big, and Netanyahu's people kept digging into the coalition. So eventually, after a year, it fell. And now the question is Netanyahu going to be back again? Like we thought, it's like old news. We thought we were over it. Even just the thought of it makes me like anxious. Going back to this shit again, life of incitement and kind of third world behavior. But still, it seems that he doesn't have the majority. But we're always afraid. Are some of the parties that say they want to go with him, did they forget how awful he is? Did they forget that he's a liar and he's not gonna hold to any promises he make? But it's very tense. And to say that Labor, on the one hand, we got to a very low number of seats in the parliament. On the other hand, after a very long time, we had ministers, 3 of them. We were influencing the government, and we felt. I think I'm sorry.
Yeah, no problem.
It's a break again. Sorry. Anibab. Sorry. I hope that was the last interference. She wanted her milk before bedtime. So that's basically the situation. And to your questions.
Yeah. I think that most of our members are well aware about the difference between the left and right in Israel, and that the Labour Party has been for a two-state solution and so on. And for other people, all they hear about when it comes to Israel is the military conflicts with Hamas and Hezbollah and so on. So could you just briefly explain, we can focus on the other issues that play a role in the Israeli elections. Can you give us a short overview?
One good example, there's status quo of between religious and secular here from a long time ago, that there's no public transportation on Saturday for Orthodox and even for religious people. They don't drive, they don't use electricity on a Saturday, and for a long time, it seems that public transportation is not working on a Saturday. And every time somebody tried to change that, the religious people in the coalition managed to stop it. And really, right now, our chairperson of the party, Merav Michaeli, she's the Minister of Transportation and Public Transportation and Safety, Road Safety. I'm not sure how to translate it, but you get the point. And she, like, I think it was last week, she managed to take this government to the edge of not a law, but a government decision, that the decision regarding public transportation on Saturday will get to the municipalities. And that's basically what we wanted, because obviously if there's a place, there's a city where most of the people are religious, then it's not the place to fight for public transportation. But in so many cities in Israel, all the big cities are mostly secular, and obviously, I don't have to tell you, what's no public transportation on Saturday. First of all, it pushes people to use a car and to own a car, because they can't get to their families on a Saturday. If you have a public transportation, then maybe less people will feel the need to own a car. People that don't have the means to own a car, that cannot get to see family and friends. So that's basically, it's something that like decades there's an Israeli struggle about it, and somehow Merav managed to do it. I hope they will not reverse it, but it's something like really really important and really intense. Other issues are the free education in Israel is only from 3 years old. So from birth to 3 years old, parents actually have to pay for either private kindergarten or there's places for 30% of the year group in like subsidized daycare. And one of our main struggles, and it seems that now some other parties are also for it, is that the state will take responsibility for its citizens from birth. Obviously, it's a lot of money. So, but there won't be equality for women until there's a free daycare, because if somebody is like earning just a little bit more of the minimum wage, it's not worth it for her to go and walk instead of staying at home with the kids. And obviously, if she have a good free alternative, then she'll go back to work. Then she might not earn only the minimum wage. She might get further ahead. And this is one of our most important struggles today.
All right. One thing I was thinking about was the difference between left and right. And historically, it's been like the left has been on the workers' rights side, and the right wing has been more like on the capitalist side. But there's also been, for instance, when Obama was going to be president, his election campaign was around hope for the future, while the opposite, Trump, has campaigned a lot around fear of Mexican and Muslim immigrants and so on. And quite often this fear is exaggerated, and they use racist statements in order to increase this fear of other people. And in different parts of Europe and also the US, they have the far right, which spreads a theory of replacement, the great replacement, that they think that white people is going to be replaced by immigrants, and that they are victims of racism against white people. And this, everyone sees this as pretty crazy and absurd, and it's considered to be a conspiracy theory with this racism against white people if you look at the whole context of the world. But in Israel, there is a saying which I think has been among the right wing mostly, that everyone is against us. And if you look at the history of the Jewish people, there's been very much huge amount of racist violence. So therefore, I was wondering if it's harder to promote a message of hope and so on in Israel compared to this fear, because in Israel, this fear of that there is some kind of threat against us is, or has been a threat and so on, is of course much more real than this threat that Trump is or people on the far right is talking about. So how do you, is it harder to promote hope in Israel, and how do you cope with this fear versus hope when you campaign politically?
First of all, maybe it's interesting to know that in Israel, this division of right and left was a little bit different, because the people that founded Israel within the foundation of Israel were mostly those who were dominant politically were from European descent. And on the one hand, they did a great job building a social democracy, but they did patronize other Jews that came from Arab countries, and obviously people grew up in a very an awful situation, awful feeling, being discriminated from where they come from, and that brought to a very weird situation that in Israel the poor vote for capitalism and the well-off vote for social democracy, because those that their parents were workers at the 1920s, now their children are upper middle class. They vote for social democracy because they think it's the right ideas, but we kind of lost connection with the actual contemporary blue collar poor sides of the Israeli society. And what you said, it's a very delicate distinction. Okay, on the one hand, when there are times of there was what they call the intifada of single people. I'm not sure how to translate it, where people just came and stab Arab that stabs Jews just sitting in a restaurant or walking in the street. And then once a friend of mine told me, okay, she lived in Jerusalem. She said, okay, I see the Arab gardener and I'm afraid. I think that I'm a racist, but that I'm afraid, but I have my baby here and I'm afraid. So I went away. So there's a difference between when there's time of stress and tension and terror attack between the day-to-day life. And one of the discussion between left and right here is regarding racism, okay? Allowing the Israeli Arabs to be part of society. And just to understand, because some people don't know it, between the borders of 67, every Israeli have equal rights by the law. There was a supreme judge from the Israeli Arab who was Israeli Arab, but still, when you see how much people are earning, when you see how much budget go to different groups in the Israeli society, Israeli Arabs are discriminated. And the left is always say, if you want to equal society, you have to promote them, you have to give more budget, you have to close the gap. And what we see with the right wing in Israel, that they take this fear that has some truth in it in some times, and like how to say, and Netanyahu inciting them that the Arabs are coming. On one of the elections, it was his famous phrase that he managed to take people, to mobilize them to go and vote because Arabs are coming to the polls by buses. Like the Arabs are Israeli Arabs that have the right to vote. But he managed to mobilize his voters with this fear. If you talked about Obama, if you want hope to overcome fear, you need a leader that inspires people to believe in hope. And we have a leadership problem within the Israeli society. We have good people like our leader Merav Michaeli and other in different parties, but it seems that at the moment we don't have a Barack Obama to unite everybody and go for the hope. So we compromised on not Netanyahu. That's our common ground at the moment.
All right. I also read recently that now over 60% of the Israelis define themselves as right-wing. And we recently had a Swedish election where there was a majority right-wing. So what would you say has been the most important lessons learned on why many people have moved to the right and what can be done about it?
That's a really good question. In Israel, some of it is demographic. Left-wing people just have less kids. Lefties have 2 kids, and right-wing have 5 kids, 10 kids, depends. If they're ultra-Orthodox, they have 10 kids. If they're religious, they have like 5 kids. And I think there's more people persuaded to the left, but and we see that, for example, a very troubling trend in this election. We have a candidate who's already a member of parliament that is an extreme right wing, that have like not semi-racist, openly racist agenda. He has footage of him as a teenager taking off the symbol of Yitzhak Rabin car, saying, hey, we got to the, how do you say the?
Yeah.
We got to that. We can get to him. He actually got me to court a year ago. 3 years ago. He took time runs, because I said in a panel that he reminds me, and his movement reminds me of movement from World War II and Nazi Germany. And he took me to court in a libel trial. Obviously, didn't win. I was a member of parliament. I had the right to say it, but this is the person. Netanyahu is legitimizing him, although most of the people on the right think he's not legitimate. But because Netanyahu wants his people, he's legitimizing him. He might be a minister. And what we see now, for the first time, that young, ultra-Orthodox guys are thinking of voting, that usually always vote for the ultra-Orthodox parties, like that's the rabbis say, and they go to vote for their ultra-Orthodox parties. But there are a lot of them thinking to vote for him. And when you see it, if you know the Friedrich Ebert Stiftung from Germany, they are also active in Israel, and they're doing some research. And you see that only 20 years ago, only 51% of ultra-Orthodox were right-wing, and now it's almost 80. So, so I think that if you go to Tel Aviv, and the main thing is that you can guess the outcome of the election. If somebody tells you what the social economical place of the city, you can guess who's people going to vote for. And we do not manage to persuade people that that our idea is better for them and better for the country.
And then I also had a question about your role as international secretary. it means that you have met a lot of people internationally, both in the social democratic movement, but also common people when you travel. So can you tell us more about what your impression is of how it is to be a citizen and sometimes the representative of Israel and your party when you go abroad?
Yeah, as I said, with Netanyahu as prime minister, it was like almost taking like very difficult discussion. The same a visit to Australia. I've met the one who's now Prime Minister Albanese, if I pronounce his name correctly. He was then an MP, and I scheduled a meeting for me and with him. And at the beginning, it was all we were talking about unions and workers' rights and how to promote social democracy. And you feel like we're the same, we have the same agenda. And then you get to the conflict, and I have to say that he was against BDS and against, but still you see that all his friends that pro BDS are like talking all the time with him, and you see that like the support for Israel is getting like weaker and weaker, and you see that especially in the US. That the more radical left within the Democratic Party, that when some of them, when Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez became a member, congresswoman, people were happy here because hey, like she came out of nowhere, she won over the what was supposed to be. But a lot of them, it's not only the Israeli thing, it's because I think it goes together, goes very much to identity politics, and has like no ear to see what's actually happening in Israel. It's not that they're coming here now that they have the option to see with their own eyes, to realize what's happening. We're not saints here, but we're definitely not what they're saying. We make a lot of effort not to kill innocent children and not to kill innocent people at all. It doesn't mean that there's no harm, but you never hear the other side. Like, try to speak with Palestinians friends about LGBT rights. Try to speak with them about equal rights for women, like all the other things that are progressive agenda. And like they said, okay, criticize us about what we need to be criticized, but also criticize them about what they need to improve. And when you see that so one-sided, it's becoming more and more difficult to talk with the extreme left in the West. By the way, the Swedish, when I was first female ever, by the way, to be chairperson of the Young Guard of the Labour Party, and in all the international conferences, our Swedish friends were not even willing to say hello to us. And I was always saying, you expect us to do a peace treaty when we have like blood and people killed, and you can't even say hello to us. It's a bit of a hypocrisy.
Very sad to hear.
But it's good to know that it's not everybody like that, and we have friends in your party.
Yeah, great. So one of my last questions before we talk with the audience questions is that quite often when I go to find pro-Israeli groups and spokespersons online, they tend to be quite to the right wing and the nationalist side. So what recommendations would you have for our kind of members and our kind of supporters to be able to support a more social democratic Israel and be pro-Israel in that way, and also to improve the relationship between our different organizations and countries?
I think you had the answer in your question. I think that social democracy is the thing that make us sister parties, is the thing that is our unifying ethos. And I think at some point when I was a member of parliament, they like brought groups of like evangelicals and etc. and extreme right wing, and they said, please talk to them because they really support Israel. And I said, okay, they really support Israel, but I share nothing with them. I stand against everything they stand for, and I think the only way to build left to left relationships, two things. First of all, the ideology and emphasizing the social democracy, because that's basically our main agenda and who we are and who you are, and I think we have a lot in common in that aspect. And the other thing is that after COVID, and there was a long break in international travel, and I think one of the good ways to build relationship is people coming here and people coming over there, not just for fun, but to study, to learn, to meet people, to have to form relationships. And I think this is a goal that we should put on the table for the years to come.
Great. So now we have one person who's asked two questions. The first one is why is it so difficult for Labour and left and center parties to get votes from Israelis that have background from Arab and North African countries? And the second question is if it's possible to unite Labour and Meretz in one party.
Okay. Very good questions. First question, as I said, there's a baggage of anger about the discrimination in the beginning, in the foundation of Israel. And even now, he said, okay, Benjamin Netanyahu is from European descent. Labour had 3 or 4, we stopped even counting leaders that were from Arab countries' descent. Like, if you see the list, I'm not even sure to say who's who, because we're trying not to do identities politics, but I think there's more from Arab countries' descent or mixed, because like people are getting younger and younger, and basically everybody married each other, and it's not of a for us it's not that much of an issue, but still it's the baggage. And also, and that's regarding what you said about Trump, there's the anti-globalization thing, okay, that elite, left-wing, Tel Aviv, European descent, that also travel the world and so also find themselves as globalized, still seem as kind of both snob and elitist, and also that cares more about values than the actual day-to-day life. So we have a lot of work to persuade that you can do both, and it does not counter, and maybe to wait for the generation to change and the baggage to disappear, because we have done a lot to face the baggage, to take the blame, to take responsibility. We're doing so much more than right wing to close the gap, but still symbols are very. It takes time to change them. Yeah. Regarding the union between Meretz and Labour, I have to tell you the truth. I will not vote for this party. I'm a center left. It's also difficult for me that only the left in my center left party stayed, and the center, that by the way always too much center for me, because I was enjoying being the left in the center left party, okay, but a lot of the center left to another party. If it was a real party, then the answer was to unite with them and to get both sides of labor together again. But they decided to unite with the further right, with the right party. And Meretz and Labor uniting, it's not going to help anything, okay? Some of our voters can't stand them. Some of their voters can't stand us. It's anyway, it's going to take, it's like when you cook something, the seasoning that has the most exotic taste always take control of the dish. It's the same in politics. If you have one group that is a little bit more extreme, this is all people are going to hear. Even when I was a member of parliament for the second term, we had 24 seats in the parliament when we were a big faction, and yet media like picked 2 or 3 more extreme or radical people within us and kept saying that this is who we are. So I think uniting with Meretz will have no merit, and it will just become Meretz, and people like me will have to find something that feels like labor.
So the last comment was actually just a comment. It was a person who wrote that it's sad that the Swedish young Social Democrats didn't take the better opportunity to create a great discussion.
It was a decade ago, I have to say. I'm 44 now. It was a decade ago. Christopher, you're muted. Is it intentionally? I can't hear you. Maybe the crowd can.
So there was a problem with my headphones, right? Yeah, but I think, as he said, it's sad, but I think that we got inspired to listening to you today, and we promised to try to fight this radicalization that we can see among some people who are too one-sided against Israel. So thanks very much for your time again.
Thank you very much for inviting me, and thank you for hosting this event.
Yeah, great. Now I'll end the broadcast. So all the viewers, see you later.
Thank you. Bye-bye.